Hey everyone, it's Sarah here. I'm an ex-Amish girl from Pennsylvania, and today I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed much outside our communities. What really happens when an Amish woman can't have children? This is a topic that was whispered about in hushed tones back in my community, and I think it's time to shed some light on the reality of it. So let me start by giving you some context. In Amish culture, having children isn't just expected, it's basically the entire foundation of what marriage is about. From the time you're a little girl, you grow up watching families with 6, 7, 8, sometimes even 12 or 14 kids. That's just normal life. The women are raising babies, the older kids are helping with the younger ones, and the whole community revolves around these big families. The Amish take the Bible verse about being fruitful and multiplying very seriously. It's not just a suggestion, it's seen as God's direct command. Most Amish couples will have somewhere between 6 and 8 children on average, though I knew families with way more than that. Children are seen as blessings from God, and they're also practical. They help on the farm, they help in the house, they continue the community traditions, and they keep the Amish population growing. Now, here's what people don't realize. When you grow up in this environment, your entire identity as a woman is tied to becoming a wife and a mother. That's it. There's no backup plan. You don't go to college, you don't pursue a career. Your value, your purpose, your whole reason for existing is to get married and have babies. So you can imagine what happens when a woman can't fulfill that expectation. First, let's talk about how infertility is even viewed in the community. It's considered God's will. If a woman can't have children, the belief is that God has decided she shouldn't be a mother. Now, on the surface, that might sound accepting, like, oh, they just trust God's plan. But in reality, it creates this heavy, unspoken burden, because while everyone says it's God's will, there's still this underlying feeling that something is wrong, that the woman is somehow incomplete. I knew a few couples back home who couldn't have kids, and let me tell you, it was heartbreaking to watch. The wife would show up to church services and community gatherings where every other woman her age had babies on their hips and toddlers running around. She'd sit there, and you could just see it in her eyes, that loneliness, that feeling of being left out of the one thing she was raised to do. The other women would try to be kind. They'd say things like, God has a plan for you, or maybe you can help with other people's children. But those words, as well-meaning as they were, just made it worse sometimes, because helping with someone else's kids isn't the same as having your own, and everyone knew it. Here's something interesting, though. Infertility seems to be less common among the Amish than in the general population. This probably has to do with their genetics and lifestyle. They marry young, usually around 20 or 21, which is prime childbearing age. They don't use birth control, they don't delay having kids for careers, and they live pretty healthy lives overall. So when a couple can't have children, it really stands out because it's so unusual. Now let's talk about what options these couples have. The Amish don't do modern fertility treatments. No in vitro fertilization, no fertility drugs, none of that. It's seen as interfering with God's plan. If God wanted them to have children, they would have children naturally. So that whole world of reproductive medicine that English people, that's what they call non-Amish folks, that English people use, that's completely off the table. Some couples do choose to adopt. And yes, Amish couples can and do adopt children. Usually they'll adopt through private adoptions, or they'll take in children from within the community, like if there's a family crisis, or if parents die. I've seen Amish families adopt kids from outside the community too, sometimes even from other countries. When they do adopt, those children are raised fully Amish, learning the language, wearing the clothes, following all the rules. But here's the thing, adoption isn't always easy or possible. It costs money, which not every Amish family has a lot of. There's paperwork and legal processes, which the Amish aren't always comfortable with, since they prefer to stay separate from the government and legal systems. And honestly, some couples just don't pursue it. They eventually accept being childless. So what happens to these women who can't have children? Well, their role in the community shifts. They become like second mothers to other people's kids. They help out at family gatherings. They assist with childcare. They're the aunts who are always available. Some women throw themselves into other work, like running a small business, doing quilting, selling baked goods, or helping with farming. But I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's hard, really hard, Because no matter what else she does, a childless Amish woman is always aware that she's different. She's always aware that she didn't fulfill the main purpose she was raised for. And in a community where everyone knows everyone's business, that's a heavy weight to carry. The community does try to be supportive in their own way. The Amish are big on helping each other out, and people will make efforts to include childless women in activities and gatherings, but there's still this gap, this unspoken sadness that hangs there. Because at the end of the day, Amish social life revolves around families and children. I remember one woman in particular from my old community. She was married for over 10 years and never had kids. She was kind, hardworking, always helping others, but you could see the pain in her eyes every time someone announced another pregnancy, every time there was a baby shower, every time the children would run around at church. She smiled and congratulated people, but I could tell it was breaking her heart inside. Her husband stayed with her, which was good because divorce isn't allowed in Amish communities, but I always wondered what their private conversations were like. Did he resent her? Did she feel guilty? Did they talk about it or just live with this silent grief between them? Here's another layer to this. When Amish couples have lots of kids, those children are their social security. The Amish don't pay into Social Security and they don't have retirement plans. When you get old, your children take care of you. So a childless couple has to think about what happens when they're elderly. Who's going to care for them? Where will they live? It adds this extra layer of worry on top of the emotional pain. Some childless couples end up being cared for by nieces, nephews, or younger members of the community. The community doesn't abandon them, but it's not the same as having your own children there. I also want to talk about the emotional and mental health side of this, because it's something the Amish don't really address. There's no therapy, no counseling, no support groups for infertility. If you're struggling, you're expected to pray about it, trust God, and move on. But grief doesn't work like that. You can't just pray away the pain of wanting something so desperately and never having it. Looking back now, after leaving the community, I realize how unfair it was. These women were made to feel like their worth was tied entirely to their ability to have babies. And when they couldn't, they were left to just figure it out on their own, with no real support system beyond people saying, "It's God's will." I think about those women sometimes, the ones who couldn't have children. I hope they found peace. I hope they found purpose beyond what the community told them they should be. But I know that for many of them, that pain never fully goes away. So that's the reality of what happens when an Amish woman can't have children. It's not talked about openly, but it's there, just beneath the surface. It's grief, it's isolation, it's trying to find your place in a community that's built entirely around something you can't have. If you found this video helpful or eye-opening, please like and subscribe. I share a lot about my experiences growing up Amish and what life was really like behind the scenes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.